I want to start with something Dan Lebitard said earlier today. He was comparing and contrasting the idea of what the package is that teams can present to the Portland Trailblazers for Damian Lillard. And I think that at the end of the day, we should probably be starting every episode of this podcast with at least an update on the Damian Lillard sweepstakes, if only because Damian Lillard is the most momentous trade chip out on the market, and he's valuable, and he's by far the biggest story in the NBA right now. Dan Lebitard basically was trying to compare and contrast the best player that you could get in a deal for Damian Lillard right now, seemingly. And he said basically that Tyler Herro is better than Tyrese Maxey. He's just whiter than Tyrese Maxey. And I found it interesting. I don't really care about like the racial aspect of it. I care a lot more about trying to compare and contrast these two as value propositions in terms of their trade value. And I think what I've come to is I do think it's a bad take to just like purely say Tyler Herro is a better asset than Tyrese Maxey. I'm willing to listen to an argument that Tyler Herro is a better player than Tyrese Maxey. I don't think I agree necessarily. I would rather have Maxey, but I'll at least hear out an argument, and maybe I'll play devil's advocate if you particularly feel strongly about Maxey. But the big key is like contract status here. And I think people are kind of missing the boat on that. So like if you were a team looking to trade Damian Lillard, let's say, and the best that you can do is get one of Tyler Herro or Tyrese Maxey, which player would you prefer to have?
I would probably go with Maxey.
Why?
A little bit more faith in his speed and a little bit more faith in the tape that I saw pre-draft of Maxey, where he at least showed that he could defend at the point of attack in some regard. It hasn't held up since he's gotten to the NBA in a lot of different ways, but I'm still clinging on to that feeling that I've seen his competitiveness, the hardwired nature of his on-ball defense, at least have some positive impact before.
I generally agree. I think the defense is a real differentiator. I don't think Maxey quite gets attacked as much as Tyler Herro does. Tyler Herro like ends up being something of a magnet
All the time. Yeah.
I do think that there is like a small chance that Herro just being bigger, like he's like in the 6'5" to 6'6" range. As he gets older, he's a high IQ player. I think there is a chance that you could make a case Herro has a little bit more upside just due to the size in playoff settings defensively than what Maxey does. But Maxey's a better defender right now, like unequivocally. If I was crafting a case, I would rather have Tyrese Maxey. I want to be very clear about this. Like in general, as a player, I would rather have Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey's a drastically better catch and shoot player. You look at his numbers last year, I think he shot like an absurd, like 47% on catch and shoot threes, just like something crazy. I think Maxey fits a little bit better as an off-ball player in general. Like his ability to use his speed to play out in transition and attack at a high level is really valuable. His ability to play off the ball and play decisively without having to dance. Like if someone closes out on him heavy because he is like a 47% catch and shoot 3-point shooter, he's able to use that speed and get into the paint and use that floater game, use that ability to potentially finish at the rim at a fairly high level. Defensively, I think he's a little bit better as well. If I was going to craft a case for Herro, I think it'd be more based around the fact that I do think Herro's a better passer than Maxey is. I don't love Maxey's playmaking ability. I think he is generally somebody that I feel a lot better playing off the ball and just like having him like read and react to what's happening around him, as opposed to Herro, who like I feel okay in ball screens with Tyler Herro in general. I feel better in dribble handoffs with Tyler Herro, with him like making decisions off of those at a fairly high level. Tyler Herro, I think, averaged like 4.5, 5 assists per game last year, something like that. Something in the ballpark there. Also has a bigger role than Maxey, plays on the ball a
Sure.
little bit more than what Tyrese does, playing next to James Harden, playing next to Joel Embiid. I do think in a lot of ways they're like both in perfect situations to accentuate what makes them good at the end of the day. Maxey being able to play off the ball, playing next to James Harden and Joel Embiid is really valuable. Herro having a little bit more on-ball ability for a team that needs that on-ball ability because they really only had Jimmy Butler to be able to create in those circumstances. I think they both get accentuated at a high level. Here's the big difference for me in terms of this. Tyrese Maxey has one more very cheap year left. Tyler Herro does not. Like, Tyrese Maxey has a season on his contract that is 1 year. I'm pulling it up as we talk. $4.3 million. Tyler Herro's on his 4-year, $120 million extension. Tyrese Maxey has not yet signed his extension. All that you hear when you talk to NBA teams is how frustrated they are with these deals like Jordan Poole's, like Tyler Herro's, that are not good team-friendly deals. Like the best case scenario is that they're properly paid if they take another step and a half in terms of their games at $30 million. The worst case scenario is that they're overpaid probably by like 12 million, something in that ballpark. Maybe Jordan Poole, like overpaid by more than that, but Tyler Herro probably by like maybe 12 million, 10 million, something like that. And I think Tyler Herro is better than Jordan Poole in general, but like my point here is that there are real outcomes along the probability scale that Tyler Herro gets something like 4.105, 4.110, something in that ballpark. And on top of it, as you extend that further out, that window of the years that contract, that second deal actually lives within, the salary cap is going to be rising within those years. So he's actually going to be an even lesser percentage of the cap than what Tyler Herro is going to be in those years. Maybe Maxey does get 4.120, but even so, it's still a better contract for Tyrese Maxey at 4.120 if you think they are equal players, because his fourth year is in a year where the salary cap will be bigger and he thus will take on a smaller percentage of the cap than what Tyler Herro does. So to me, A, I would just rather have Tyrese Maxey as a player. B, I think Tyrese Maxey is a more valuable asset by like a pretty real amount as a player. Do you kind of fall in line with that?
Yeah, I do. I think the percentage of the cap is a really important part of how you look at contracts. It's not just the raw number of how much a guy is getting paid per year. It's how much does it hamstring the rest of your team in order to go out and get other good players. So, 120 million over 4 years now looks a lot different than it will for the next 4 years. With Maxey and Herro for that matter. Like I really like what you said earlier, that it really depends on the context of the team that they're going to be playing on or the role that they're going to be asked to fulfill. Yeah,
Yeah.
I still think that there might be a little bit more untapped potential for a guy like Maxey to play with the ball in his hands, just because he hasn't gotten that fully long leash in Philadelphia. He
Yep.
spends a lot of time deferring to James Harden or trying to feed the ball inside to Joel Embiid at different times. I do think that there's at least a little bit more there that he can show in a little bit higher of a role. But at the end of the day, if you score 20 points a game, your contract is going to get boosted up and up and up. And for these smaller guards, like a lot of times that number is a little bit above probably what they're all worth.
I think that's right. The other thing about Maxey is that I think generally Tyler Herro probably is the best playoff run between the two of them when Herro helped them to the NBA finals, right? In his rookie year. But since then, Herro's just kind of been so-so in the playoffs, obviously missed a substantial portion of the playoffs this year. The last 2 years, Tyrese Maxey's been really good in the playoffs, like really quite good. In 23 games, he has averaged 20.7 points while shooting 46, 39, 93 in the playoffs with a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. Like, I think that Maxey is just like a better bet at this point than Herro is, frankly. I get why people want to compare these guys because theoretically they could be the main centerpiece. Here's the other thing I want to talk about, and I'm very glad that Lasiri brought this up because this was my final point here in terms of what I wanted to finish on. Lasiri in the YouTube comments brings up, I just don't get why people want to keep talking about Maxey Herro to Portland when they already have that player in Simons. I agree. I don't totally know why. I get why, because these are potentially the two best players that Portland could theoretically end up with in such a deal. Portland also already has Scoot Henderson in addition to this, and they already have Shaedon Sharpe in addition to this. Shaedon's a little bit bigger. You could imagine him playing the 3 pretty easily, I think. But they have Simons and Scoot, and that's like 2 smaller guards that, frankly, like, I don't know if I want to play them both together, but you could certainly do it, and it'd be fine. If I'm trying to like build an ideal roster, I don't know if I want to play them together. But end of the day, it's hard to build an ideal roster in the NBA. Everybody is competing against one another, and if you're playing Simons and Scoot together, you're going to be fine. Yeah, I don't. If I'm Portland, I'm like trying to move both these guys to a third team. I think at the end of the day,
Yeah.
If this is the best asset that you can get, I'd be trying to move both these guys to a third team.
Yeah, I mean, Sam, a month ago, a little over a month ago, you and I sat here on the podcast right after the Denver Nuggets won the NBA championship and talked about how smart of a roster build they are, and they don't have a guy under 6'5". Like, you can't collect a roster, even if they're individually talented guys. It's really hard to win with multiple smaller players on your team. So I think that's a really good point about what Portland is building. We wouldn't take any of these guys over Scoot Henderson long term. And I think trying to project, the differences between them and Simons or their ability to coexist next to Scoot, it's just too many smaller guys in one spot.
Woosh asks, if Cat were on the table, is he better than the other options? I would not want to trade for Karl Anthony Towns' contract if I am Portland. Just point blank, I would not have interest in that. And then people are bringing up Simons' advanced numbers in general. What I'll say is this. I don't love Anthony Simons defensively. I don't think he's great. He has not played in like anything resembling a solid defensive infrastructure the last 2 years. And I would be intrigued at the very least to see what he looks like in a better infrastructure defensively, I think. And I also wouldn't take his like defensive, EPM numbers as gospel, given the fact that Portland's defensive situation and given how many games he has played where they've been like kind of out of the picture a little bit. I wouldn't take like the advanced defensive numbers as gospel on most of these guys, frankly, but particularly Portland because they've been in kind of a funky situation the last couple of years.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So to close the loop on this, if I was Portland, I'd be handling this exactly the same way that Joe Cronin and company are. I get the impression that like Miami media people, Le Batard included, who I am an enormous fan of Dan Le Batard. I think he's great. I just think that, Miami media people need to kind of get in here for the long haul and understand that this might take some time and that there probably need to, more than anything, he said there's not calls going back and forth between Miami and Portland. What Miami needs to do is find a third team more than anything. Like, I get it that there's not calls going back and forth between Miami and Portland. There need to be calls going back and forth between Miami and like somebody else that has real value across the league for what would be a rebuilding team moving forward in Portland. That's where I get a little bit confused about it all, I think.
Yeah. I mean, what's Portland going to do? They don't want any of the guys that Miami could offer straight up. If they did, they would have taken that deal already. So, like, hey, Pat, go call somebody else, man.
Yep.